Hello.
Hello.
How's it going, Deb?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Was that a I'm not doing well, but I'll say I'm doing well? Or was
No,
that
actually, I am. No, really, I
Oh,
am.
that's good.
We're going to have a snowstorm here. I'm healthy, quarantined, um, starting to write a book, and it's a process. And client work is calming down, so it's a good thing.
What exactly was that, Rob?
Oh, I've got a teleprompter now,
Oh,
so I can see you guys in my teleprompter. I don't have to look at my adjacent screen. So yeah,
got it. So that you can look at the camera.
camera directly, right?
Love it.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's smart.
So I've got a
I've s-
got a little screen here that's sitting in my teleprompter.
right, right.
That is the art of trying to like look at you guys and look at
Mm-hmm.
this thing,
Yep.
but
Right.
we're friends.
That's great though. That's great. I never thought of that. I mean, I thought of it for reading something, but it's cool for doing video meetings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Yeah.
I ended up not really needing one that badly, but I saw there's a couple of hacks online where you can create a teleprompter pretty
Mm-hmm.
easy for yourself. You just have like a piece of glass and put it at the right angle and
Yeah. I mean,
put it in front of a
that's
camera.
that's really all it is. I mean, you just put my actually I have a camcorder that's sitting behind the glass, and it has to be kept dark back there too. So you have to keep a thing packed around it, so it keeps it dark. And then you just I went out and got a Android tablet. So, and that's what's running, and I'm mirroring the image that's on my Surface computer up to it, so I can make a call and it looks the same. So I've got three screens with you guys on it right now.
Nice, nice.
Three times the fun.
Yeah.
I really wanted you to say everything that I'm saying is scripted right now.
Yeah, right. Well, I
Down to
could
the
actually
word.
do that here. So that was the other part of it too, is that I occasionally get asked to present concepts, and I need to have an outline. So sometimes it helps.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
cool. That's very
Yep.
interesting. All right. Well, let me see here. Let me give a little intro as I usually do, and then we could dive in for the day. Let's see here. Let's bring that up. Okay, so welcome to the Business Podcast Mastermind. This started with a few talented friends in the business podcasting space who expanded to create a weekly event where a wider audience can join. We have your hosts here, co-hosts here, Rob Greenlee. You can say hi. He's the VP of Content and Partnerships at Libsyn, chair of the Podcast Academy, co-host of the New Media Show, and longtime evangelist of the podcasting industry. Sorry, I missed something. Were you trying to say something, Rob?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Henry Lopez, a serial entrepreneur, small business coach, and host of top-rated How of Business podcast dedicated to helping others start, run, and grow their small businesses. Vinay Koshi, host of the Predictable B2B podcast, founder of Sproutworth. He helps others achieve predictable business growth and influence through content marketing. And I'm Ethan Janney, business and executive coach and co-host of the Run With It podcast, which invites 7+ figure entrepreneurs to share business ideas and the action steps to launch them. And just saying hi to those people viewing on Facebook, YouTube. Actually, I was excited. I had a friend that's in our podcast network that just got their, they actually had someone reach out to them for sponsorship, but they had a lot of questions on how to execute that. And I could easily say, oh, hey, here's a couple episodes that we did on sponsorship and monetization. Check them out. So that was fun. So for today, I thought we'd mix it up a little bit, mix between a few different things. One, giving a little bit of a kind of past, present, and future on each of us in terms of the host, or maybe even our attendees here, Deb. Just to kind of reflect on, the successes, the maybe failures or mistakes, where we're at present. And then I really think it's interesting to think long-term with this stuff, especially interesting from your perspective, Rob, if you've sort of been in it a long time, but also kind of what is it like to think a year, 2, 3, 5, 10 years out in the future? Can you do that? How do you do that when you're thinking about your content? And then Rob had a couple of interesting suggestions. If we get to it, we can talk about some of the newer trends in podcasting, different ways that technology is progressing so that we're interacting and engaging with and around podcasts in a different way. So it's on our agenda today. Actually, maybe get very, very started here with Deb, just asking you, how are things going with you? What's been on your mind lately? And you said you've been working on the book. Have you been also thinking about how that relates to the podcast, or?
Yeah, so thank you. So the book is my attempt to finally distill all the content creation that I've been doing for 2 years, whether it was on video, the podcast, blog posts, etc. I really need to distill down my talking points into a system to my target audience, and then that becomes my business card. And with that, hoping to be a guest on other podcasts speaking to my audiences. So it's really a great pause to now bring it all together. I have a book coach that's taking me through the process, not a publisher right now, looking at self-publishing, but I'm also talking to somebody that does publishing for entrepreneurs. So the marketing part of the book is really blowing up my brain. So I decided to pause and focus on writing. Obviously, the podcast, my own, is a great platform to start speaking about it, but then also on others. So that's kind of like my near term, oh my God, I'm about to do something I've never done before, but it's been part of the plan. That's the book. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts, though, about the podcast, reflecting on it and, going forward, but I can pause there if you want.
Yeah, for sure. That's fascinating. I'm curious about your book coach. How long have you been working with them? How's that working out? I mean, and what is the kind of features of you that you're getting most out of that?
Great question. So Judy Weintraub, she actually was a podcast guest. I think I manifest my guides and coaches by the people that I actually interview. So that's who I came in. So I can write. I have no problem with content, but I needed the mechanics of the process. First of all, what is a process for writing a book, not the actual writing, and then all the technical stuff of how to self-publish and ISBN and editing the thing and just doing all that stuff with Amazon and the other things. I just didn't want to do it myself, and I trust her. We built a really great relationship. Now, it feels good right now, and the offer was reasonable. However, there's always that self-doubt. Deb, are you thinking too small? Should you be going big? Should you be going with somebody that's going to just push you out of the bookstores and all that? And I struggled with that. And so then I've come to a place where I said, you know what, what's most important to me is I just want to write good content. And while it may seem small, I want to test me out first, get the book, self-publish, guest on other shows, speak about it, and get me right before I start thinking about bolting on people that I'm going to have to pay a lot of money to further push it out. So that's kind of where my thinking is right now.
Yeah, interesting way to think about it. Yeah, in terms of, I'm curious, Rob or anybody else, have you seen other folks publish books and seen the process and seen how it works out for them?
Yeah, it's always been, I think, a helpful exercise for everyone that I've known that's done it. It's actually got them a lot of additional exposure around their area of focus and what they're doing, whether it be guesting on other podcasts or in other media, or it demonstrates a certain amount of leadership and thought around a particular topic, and really kind of is a demonstration of one's expertise in a certain area. And I think, it takes a lot of work putting a book together. It's not something that everybody is going to feel comfortable doing. But if you can get it done, I think it helps you a lot. But I think you still need to keep building on it. And just because you have a book behind you doesn't mean that you can kind of sit back and let it come to you. You still have to work it just like anything else these days.
And yes, of course, it'll get on my website with a
Yep.
pre-order here, pre-launch there, social media buzz. I got a guide for that to kind of do all that stuff. So, yeah, but it's an extension of me. The podcast is an extension of me. My thought leadership. The book is also an extension,
Mhm.
and it just makes me more interesting and relevant. So I put it on my website. Maybe
Mhm.
not quite the final title, but I'm putting it out there, so I'm committed.
Yeah.
But
So what is the working title? I haven't been to your website.
functional title, and again, the Drop-in CEO, Your Guide to Peace of Mind.
Got it.
Drop-in CEO.
So just to add, so I haven't published a book, so my perspective is only from at the receiving end of it. Excuse me, having clients who have done so, and of course many guests. I think it continues to be, regardless of how it gets published, one of those things that people look at with some level of respect. So I think it helps to build your authority on the topic.
Right.
So I think it still serves as that. It's interesting. I have a client who is in the process of writing it, and he is in the academia field. And he feels like for him, the only route is to professionally publish. I don't know if that's the right term. So not self-published. And I've challenged him on that so many times because the result, what I have seen with my clients who have started this journey, is that 2 years later, they still haven't published anything, right? Whether it's self-published or professionally published, what have you. And my thought continues to be that you got to get it out there. Now, I'm the receiving end of a lot of pitches, as I'm sure everybody here is, to be on my show with the book. And I've perused some that are not good. But by and large, I don't judge, well, was this professionally published or self-published? I don't make that determination. To me, it's still, if it's good, it's still a positioning and a summary of your position, your methodology, as you said, or whatever it is that you're putting forth in this book. And I think it still commands that level of respect and achievement. So I think it's valuable in that regard. But my only piece of advice, if it is advice, would just be, what I've observed is people will take forever to write this thing. And I think that's why you're wise in getting that coaching help, because I think what has to creep in, not having done it, is this will never be perfect, right? I got to keep
Good.
iterating
Yeah,
until it's perfect. Yeah.
I'm over that.
Good. To me, that's what I've observed as the biggest barrier to people saying, I'm going to write a book, but they never quite get it done.
Well, and there's also examples of books that are put out in updated versions, right? So you
That's
come up
right.
with a concept, and then a year
Yeah.
later you write an update to it or something
Yeah.
like that. I know that these books can be serialized too to some degree.
Yeah. The other thing that I've been told, and even as most recently as I had the opportunity to have Gino Wickman on my show,
Good.
for most of us, and maybe you're an exception, we can't be too much thinking that we're going to make a lot of money selling books.
Yeah.
It's a loss leader, maybe not to that extreme, but it's about something else. It's not about monetizing in and of itself, right? So,
Yep, it's my business card.
right, exactly,
It's a lead to other stuff.
That's right. It's a lead into selling what you're really going to make money on. That's the way it's always been explained to me.
So that's the expectation. And so, I mean, I'll pause a little bit. Thank you for asking about that. Again, I've got a high amount of discipline and accountability. That's been the theme for this year, and it may carry over into next year. That's what's been able to keep me forward. I mean, I've got a lot of things I'm thinking about the podcast as well. This team here has been blowing up my brain with a lot of ideas that I haven't yet been able to execute on, but just know I've got all the notes. It's been very valuable. And I would like to monetize the podcast a little bit, but it's serving me in the way that I want to. And it's starting to lead to some really cool conversations.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I was gonna give a couple of pieces of perspective. One, I haven't written a book, but I have written a PhD dissertation. Definitely
Pretty darn
took
close.
that took that route of get it done, just get it done, finish that thing, and move on to the next thing. And I watched my wife just finished her PhD dissertation as well. And I definitely saw that through the process. It's just about building a habit of writing, really, just every day, set the time aside. Some days it's going to go horribly, no words are going to come out. And, it's going to seem completely like it's never going to finish. And the other days it's all going to just pour out, but it's the kind of the average of how it goes along. It eventually gets finished if you keep the habit. Are you having like a daily habit or like a weekly habit, or what's your
Yes.
writing habit?
So I actually have it booked on my calendar 3 days a week, 3 hours each day, and then 2 hours over the remaining. So a total of about 11 hours a week. It's in hard coded into my calendar. Right now, I'm
Great.
not writing. I'm curating all the information from quotes, blog posts, LinkedIn video, podcast guest transcripts, my podcast guesting transcripts. So I'm in that discipline of just curating now. But I have an outline, and my first goal is to get to a working outline for the book and have that reviewed. But I have to curate. So I've got so much content, and I had to do it now because I've created so much, and it's just going to get lost forever. So.
I literally have so much content that I can't curate it all. I had been recording like even back since like 2015, 2014. I mean, there's some things before that, but I started recording like different meetings and things like that, that I would have teaching people, things like that. And at a certain point out, I realized, oh, wow, going back and editing these things and putting them all together, it's its own task, you know? So yeah, I think that's a smart thing to just take a moment, take a breath and say, focus on that, curating it and putting it together.
And I had to actually focus down. There's like 3 people that I would write a book for, 3 people that go through transition. I had to pick one. So it's a great sorting tool to say, okay, this will be for the next book. I'm just going to focus on this content now because those are the people whose problem I want to solve and who I want to speak to.
I put a link in the chat you might find useful. We had a guest on our podcast named Rob Fitzpatrick. He's kind of known more as like a programmer and entrepreneur, although he's also had quite a bit of experience in education and creating live like learning experiences and things like this. But he is working on a book right now, and that link to writeusefulbooks.com is has more information on it, and it's kind of interesting the path that he's taking. So he's taking it kind of the way that software development has gone, and that is, as he writes it, he is testing it on potential users, so that he actually has a handful of people who are reading the book, trying the things that he's telling them to do. And then if they come back and say, I don't get it, then he rewrites the book so that it makes sense. And so built into the process, he's answering unanswered questions, he's filling in the blanks. But then on top of that, he's going to have like success story testimonials, right? By the time he's done writing the book, because they're going to be people who have followed him through the process and, had success because he kind of made sure that they did by writing it appropriately. And I think, again, I'm sure you have different resources that you're going to gravitate towards, but I think he's actually still open for those people, right? So like if you want to sign up and be a beta tester for his book, you can read his manuscript, and then you can actually reach out to him and say, hey, I didn't get this. I'm working on my book, and you said I should do this, this, and this. And, I tried it. It doesn't really work. And he can come back and say, oh, let me rewrite that chapter. There's some details that you need. So might be something interesting to look into.
Yeah, I've heard others that will write a chapter and then they'll put that chapter out just like a PDF or something like that. And then I've even heard others will create a podcast episode about that chapter and then get feedback from people about it, kind of doing the same thing that Ethan was just talking about. I can see that being something too. It'd be an interesting way to kind of crowdsource the content somewhat, right?
Helpful.
Yeah, that's a nice integration with the podcast potentially. You get a chapter done, you do an episode on that, about that chapter, get feedback, interaction.
Very helpful. I mean, I know some people, I've seen the PDF ebooks, lead magnets, but didn't think about the podcast episode. That's helpful. Yeah.
Curious, Deborah, did you put together a book proposal before you began the process, or?
I mean, that's an interesting concept, but who am I proposing it to?
So having spoken to a few, at least a couple of book publishers, they talked about the idea of doing up a book proposal. Even if you self-publish, in order to validate demand for the idea or the concept of the book?
That's why I have a book coach, and obviously some trusted advisors, because I did actually throw out another title to somebody and I got one of those. So that was good feedback. So now my book coach, I trust at least am I on the right track? And then I will test it with others. But it came to me yesterday morning and I was almost not sure I wanted to share it with other people because I think I landed on the title, but I'm going to propose it to my coach and we'll go from there.
Cool. Vinay, I'm curious of your experience with that. When you hear of people writing the book proposal, even if they self-publish, is it to present to other individuals who they think might read it, or is it more to actually present to publishers, even though you might not get it published, but to get their feedback on what they find interesting?
Yeah.
It's my takeaway was that even if you self-publish, the idea of writing a book should fill a gap or a niche in the existing marketplace, so that your idea or thesis that you're putting out there does have some traction in the marketplace, as opposed to reiterating what's already been published and talked about.
I think the concept of the book proposal is right. I believe the process I'm following with the coach, both the functional title and the outline, and answering those questions: who is it for? What problem am I solving? And what do I hope to get out of that? That's in essence the proposal. And then I probably should test with a few trusted people. So in essence, I will be doing that without it being called a proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, I've seen the same thing. The client, for example, that I mentioned, he put together a book proposal, regardless of whether he goes the formal route or not. But as Vinay said, it's kind of, I look at it as kind of like the business plan for a small business. Sometimes the audience is you, but you're kind of pitching to yourself, if you will, that this makes sense, that you've answered the right questions. And obviously it sounds like you have. And then interestingly, the same client, as you all have mentioned, from that book proposal came a very good lead magnet that he's using as one of his. Now he doesn't have a it's a drop compared to the amount of content that you have, Deb. So for him, it was a matter of he was getting bogged down with writing the book and not launching the business, the coaching and consulting business, because the book had to be done. So, but out of that came a good lead magnet. So that's the other way I've seen it used.
If we don't mind exploring this a little more, I'm interested in this question that you raised, Deb, in terms of how high to aim, I guess, how. I think you were putting it in terms of how much do you invest, really? Are you spending a lot of money because you want it to aim for a bigger drop on it or something? But also just, I guess how ambitious to be, right? Is it, do we start with Rob, were you going to say something, or were you just taking a breath?
No, just taking a breath.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I know I've recommended in other scenarios, it's when getting guests, at least on a show, right? It's aim higher, aim for the people that you might think you can't get, at least try it out. But I'm almost second guessing that with publishing content where I'm the authority, right? It's do I, or maybe not, right? Or maybe put myself out there, be the authority, and then back it up, and then I'm sort of forced to, or, oh, hey, this is my freshman, experience of publishing a book. I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to make myself out to be something great, but I'm just going to put something out there and see where it goes. Yeah. You seem like you have an opinion on this, Deb.
I have an opinion. Okay. So first of all, and what, I'm hearing doubt. I believe I have something worth saying and sharing with others. So I don't doubt the content is going to be good. I have that confidence. What I'm wondering, however, is how much do I pay other people money to push me out there with their strategy? Because I've heard at least 50% of the people said, oh, I throw this money at this PR firm or this publisher, and I wound up having to switch publishers because we weren't aligned. I've heard more than 50% have had to double their investment in that area. I believe I'm probably one of the best promoters myself, and while that may be short-sighted and small-minded, even though I think big, I have to trust myself. I am trusting a guide to mechanically do the process the right way. I believe there's a company I like, really like Interview Valet, who they may help position me on the right podcast. And I believe myself self-promoting will do the right work. However, is it enough? Do I need to do more? And there's a third person that I'm wondering, should I invest in them? Because they may be thinking of things that I should be doing that I haven't thought about myself. So I don't want to be so stubborn to say, well, this is what I'm going to do. I am open to other ideas, but not necessarily a PR company that's going to make a lot of money off of me, or a publisher that I have to do more work and pay them a lot of money and only get 20-30% royalty. That's kind of where I'm at a little bit. But right now I'm just saying I'm going to self-publish. I'm going to go on a lot of podcasts. I'm going to do a lot of social email marketing. But I am wondering if there's just something else that I need to do to just push it a little bit, because I'm confident in me, but it's what is the right exposure to get the message out is what I'm not sure about.
Got it. Yeah, that's definitely a tough question. How much to invest? I often gravitate towards not investing in something until I'm seeing a return on it. You know, almost like investing commensurate to what I'm getting from it. Yeah, but I don't know that that's always the best.
You know, you have to develop yourself, your message, and be sure you can't pay somebody else to get your message. But I believe what I have to say in my message is really good. So I trust me. It's all those mechanical things that I'm willing to invest in if technically I'm not the best person to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think it's a tough call too, to trust that someone's going to be better at being you than you. And that's kind of what you're hoping. So, yeah, I mean, to represent you in a way that's how you want to be seen by the market is hard for someone else to do for you. So, yeah.
And I have one person, he was actually my number one podcast guest and one of my mentors. And he's going to be on my 100th episode. And I may be looking to him so he may know exactly what it is that takes the best of who I am and keep doing certain things that are working. And then what do we do just to amplify it a little bit more? That's the question I have.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I'd also lean towards what Ethan is talking about, which is you got to continue, as I'm sure you are, Deb, to be focused on what is it that I'm trying to accomplish with this first release of the book. And that's where you focus your money, because, you know, I heard it said to me this other way, and I'm trying to remember who it was on my show, and it might have been off the record, so maybe as well that I don't remember. But he had a book that you would have recognized the author, and the way he said that it's done, the way he's done it is it's in waves. And so that initial wave isn't the only time you're going to promote this book, obviously, that there are subsequent waves. And it touches onto what Ethan is saying, that you want to be sure, you want to be careful with throwing a lot of money at something that maybe wasn't necessary. And also, you don't necessarily look at this as, I only have this one launch shot to get the most exposure for this book. That's not the way I've seen it work.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a piece of content. It's the same
That's
approach you would take with your podcast too. I mean, it's just another medium is what it is. The way to promote it is very similar. I don't see a huge difference between promoting a podcast and promoting a book. It's very similar.
I will say this in terms of the value of promotion, you know, whether it's needed or whether something kind of draws attention to itself or not, especially with this convention that I just have done, and some of the podcast sort of meeting, I don't know what to call these things that I'm doing, but basically weekly meetings that I'm doing, group meetings. I have this email list, and it's incredibly obvious how clear the connection is between promoting something and seeing a result, especially in the sales aspect, you know, to be able to say, hey, this is for sale, remember? Oh, okay. And then somebody gets the email and they go ahead and get it, you know, or, oh, hey, this is out there, do you want to check it out? And then you see people are clicking there. We also had some sponsors for this event that I recently did, and I put some tracking I put some links in emails, just saying, oh, thanks to our sponsors. And I would put links to them, but I put tracking links in there to see. And sure enough, that was the place where they got the most clicks. It's just sending out emails and reminding them that people that this was a sponsor, and then they get clicks. So things don't just happen. They need to be pushed. They need to be promoted in some way.
Yeah, and I believe that there's kind of two ways of looking at it too. There's brand building, and then there's actual direct response type of ROI on something too. So it's the same thing that applies to podcast advertising. Is that there's two ways for a company to look at the medium as a promotional tool too, and that applies to promoting a book or a product or a service online. Is that there's two techniques. There's one that's building brand and reputation, and then there's a technique to actually get direct sales, right? So you have, a lot of people will do these click funnels and things like that, and those are more get a lead, convert that, all that kind of stuff. And then there's the other side where you go on podcasts and you kind of talk about the content. You're kind of brand building is what you're doing there. So it's coming up with those strategies and figuring out what your goals are based on if you're trying to sell books or are you trying to build your brand. I think you can do both, but sometimes doing one or the other takes a slightly different strategy. So,
Deb, are you familiar?
Because I'm not going to make money off the book, or at least that's what people tell me, and I always buck what people tell me.
You might be able to make money on it. Sure, it depends on how popular it is, right?
Yeah, so trying to build my connections at the same time too, build a foundation during this process.
Are you familiar with the idea of using the whole book itself as kind of like I guess we were talking about lead magnet, or a place where it's like to get someone to the top? I don't know how to put this to make it clear.
Oop.
Sorry, I muted myself.
Okay.
Now people are giving away books, right? That they're literally giving them away for shipping and handling, something like that, right? So you've written a book, it should be $30. If you go on Amazon, it's going to be $30. That's the way it is. But it's basically people want the book. It's a whole book. It's not just like a white paper or a one sheet or some sort of, quick data thing. And then they can go to your site and say, yeah, I want the book for free. Yes, I'll give you my credit card for shipping and handling, so on and so forth. Get the book. And then now what it is that you've got their contact information, really. Right. And then there's another. So I think the piece that might be interesting, and you probably already think of it in a way, but you could think of it a little bit more in detail, is this value ladder concept. So the book, like a free book for $7.95 shipping and handling, can be the first step in a value ladder. And the next step could be a product or service that's on the order of like $100. And the next could be a product or service on the order of $500, and you're sort of slowly but surely, as you build that relationship of trust with that person, offering them higher value products and services.
But then that needs to be your strategy going into the book creation process too, because what you want to do is not deliver all the value in the book. What you want to do is deliver just enough to tease them to want the next thing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's almost a different kind of book, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not a quick I'll do a PDF ebook before giving away the book. And I have partnered with some, and they talk about start building that up. Obviously, I'm already giving away a lot of free content, LinkedIn Live, the podcast, etc. We're now starting to think about, well, where could I be doing a master class or a podcast, just to kind of get them in start asking for a little bit of money versus doing it for free. And then there's the book, and then there's the course, and then there's the consulting or what have you. So I'm aware of that, and I'm probably in the early stages of building that pyramid.
Yeah, just my thoughts on that, Ethan, because I've consumed both of those types of books. Rob mentioned ClickFunnels, and that's been Russell Brunson's approach with his book, right? Pay the shipping and handling. And then I've obviously I buy books all the time. I just wonder with the free model, if you undervalue it as a consumer, you undervalue it a bit if it's free. What are your thoughts on that, Ethan? And the rest of you, and Deb, of course. But that's would be my concern. I know as a consumer, and you're seeing this a lot in other applications of it, like when you do a webinar or whatever. And I know it's not the same thing, but I think that psychologically we will value something more if we paid something for it. What are y'all's thoughts?
I think that some amount of payment is useful for pinning a value on it. I do think that when people get things that are completely free and they're just, oh, here, I just tossed a bunch of copies of my book on this table here. Everybody pick up one, then they pick it up and then they put it down someplace else, But I think a lot of it has to do with framing, and people, one thing that I've picked up in, learning from some people who are more expert in sales than I, is this idea of what's the catch? What's the catch? And so if you can give somebody to something for free or cheap, and they, instead of them going, oh, this must be a cheap thing, they go, what's the catch?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you can give them a catch, then they have not devalued it, if that makes sense. So if somebody goes, it's free, what's the catch? Come on. And you go, okay, it's free, but here's the catch. You've got my book for free, but you've got to send me, this is totally a dumb idea, but you've got to send me a letter with your update on how it worked out for you. You've got to give me
like a review or something.
A review,
right?
Or a testimonial, or something.
Right.
I think
Right.
when there's something, a give and take involved, as long as you establish that, you can avoid that devaluation of whatever it is that you're sort of giving for free. That's my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it does help to get, people are always giving something. And the more that you can get them to give, even if it's not money, then the better it is for that relationship, because they're investing something in it. So like, I gave free access to some content recently, right? And it was quite expensive. And at first it was, you just go sign up. And then I said, well, why not just have it be $1? And I could tell that was a big difference, right? Somebody spending $1 on something, going to the site to register, seeing the price that it was supposed to be, it all puts it in perspective where they value it, and they take advantage of it and they participate and they get more out of it, rather than just saying, hey, so I think you can force the issue of people investing something, even if it's not money. And I think that helps them keep a sense of value around the thing that you're offering. That's the way I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I agree.
I think the people have to make a decision if they want to make an investment in themselves. It's not me, it's themselves. So it comes at a price, and you need to be willing to invest. Again, I give a lot away for free already, so the book will not be free.
Yeah, and
but it won't hurt you.
And part of that decision-making process of deciding it on the part is trust and confidence that they're going to get something of value that will have a positive impact too. So that's why that's why the freemium model works pretty well, is that you're building confidence is what you're doing, that what you're offering, what you're selling is going to deliver, basically. But it also is an emotional thing too. If they feel that they connect with you and want to get to know you more, or want to have some deeper connection with you too, I think that happens very similar to what happens in podcasting, I think.
Yeah.
Your publishing coach may have, great advice on this too, but I'll because I'm thinking about it, we can also explore the other side of things. So we talked about giving it away for free, but since you're self-publishing, you have a unique opportunity where you can determine the price of it. So typically somebody's selling a book, it's like $30, right? If it's, somewhere between $10 and $30, maybe $50. But, there's books, if I go buy a textbook, it's, $300, $500, right? So you can actually help people value it more, depending, and if you may charge more than the typical book, right? So you can frame the content that you're creating as something that, hey, this isn't your typical book. You know, this is a bespoke resource for a specific type of person, or for a specific niche, or someone in a specific situation. And I know that you're going to get a lot of value out of it. And so it's not priced like a book that you're going to find at Barnes and Nobles. You know, it's at a different level. And then in that case, you don't have to sell as many to make money, you know, and you also know that the people that you sell it to are the people that are serious about what you can do and how you can help them. So that's a totally other direction
Yeah.
you could go.
Yeah, we're certainly going to discuss price at some point. I think what comes to mind is I'd like to cover my investment at a minimum, cover my investment if I sell only X number of books. I think that's just the first thing out of the gate. Anything else I get on top of that, especially speaking to people as a result of the book, is what I'm really looking for. But,
So I mentioned this topic up front. I thought maybe I could dive into it a little bit. And this has been fascinating to talk about. I hope it's been helpful for you, Deb.
I'm getting too much attention here. I'm getting a little uncomfortable. We can topic or switch to somebody else. I mean, I could talk. You know, we're podcasters. You know.
I'm gonna switch a little bit. It talked about this idea of just giving a little bit of a past, present, and future on each of our situations, or whatever we can cover in the remainder of the session here. But briefly, you know, where I'm at with my podcast, Chris and I started it over a year ago, but not that much longer than a year ago. We've got, you know, we've got over 60, 70 episodes out now. And I wrote a little post about our progress so far, and it was interesting to reflect on and write that post. And the pattern that I've seen is that it's about keeping at something, but also trying something new consistently trying new ways to grow. And not all of those are going to hit, but if we didn't try new things, it was pretty stagnant. And that was necessary to kind of have new game plans, new objectives, new outreach, new things like that as we went along. And then most recently we had double the amount of downloads in November that we had in October. Is that right? Yeah. In December, we may even double what we had in November. Now we didn't have like a ton of downloads, but that's quite significant for us. You know, we haven't seen that type of an inflection point in our growth since before then. And what appears to be, there's a couple of things that have come together for us. One is we joined this Indie Hackers Network. So just having a little bit more support and encouragement. And now we have someone who's actually, you know, listening to our podcast on a regular basis, incentivized to help it grow, giving us feedback, giving us advice, giving us direction, and how he thinks, you know, we might benefit from changing it. We also had a guest recently. It was interesting. We wouldn't have known this. We've talked previously about why do certain things work, and sometimes you don't even know. We had this big jump in our downloads, and we were meeting with our group in this Indie Hackers Network, and we were all trying to think why would it spike just then? Because we had been featured like a couple of weeks previously. It didn't even spike that much. And this guy got, oh, I was listening to this other podcast, Software Social, and the guest that you had on your show recently, he mentioned you, and he said, I described this business idea, you know, on the Run With It podcast, which I just went on. So then that was pretty much a clear point where that drove traffic for people to download our show. And then his episode was one that came out, you know, the week or two after he talked about it. And so then we got even more activity, and his was the most downloaded episode by far within the first 2-week period than any others. So it's interesting to see that aspect of what worked there. And that was somebody talking about being a guest on our show and talking about our show. So that's a little bit of where we're at right now. And then in terms of where we're going, it's interesting to try to think long term. You know, a year from now, 2 years from now, we're trying to be at least a top 100. Yeah, our goal for this year was to be a top 100 entrepreneurship podcast. I think I haven't checked recently. I don't know whether they're going to make it by the end of the year, but we've gotten high up there into the top 200, I think, in some situations. And Chris and I, we talk about various things, and we're not sure how clear we're going to actually do them, but to make the podcast into some sort of business accelerator where, because we have people bring on business ideas for the show, we have the unique opportunity to maybe even curate the growth of these businesses these business ideas that get presented on the show later on down the line. Maybe we even are, investors in these businesses or help launch them as part of not just a show like an incubator. So that's where we're at maybe in the short term. And actually, I'm not really clear on like what's it going to be like 5 years from now? Are we still going to be publishing the Run With It podcast, and what does it look like? But I'm just we're taking it week by week and making sure to keep consistent with it and let it go somewhere. Anybody else have any like kind of a presentation like that? A little bit of past, present, future? Yeah. Rob?
Go ahead. I mean, I do, but if anybody else wants to go next, that's fine.
Rob.
Sure.
I'll jump in.
Okay, go ahead.
One of the things I've learned past is about guest reciprocity, just understanding which become really decent relationships or points of collaboration versus just a passing in the night. I've gotten really good at trying to figure that out because some people just didn't promote, and you don't look for it, but it's really nice. One thing I found in terms of my present is just realizing that it's good to experiment. I'm trying new things in terms of my style, loosening up, extending my offers, putting a preamble onto my show, and personal stories. That's what I'm doing right now, and it seems to be making it more relevant and more personable. And then I wonder, in the future, do I become more of a media company because of the talent that I have as a host to disarm people and be able to actively listen and elevate them? I'm just wondering if it's really an extension of the drop-in CEO brand, that, people that come into my circle, the relationships I build, somehow we enter into a collaboration that helps them through their business challenge or vice versa. So it's really interesting. It's not just a hobby anymore. I think there's actually something there that really pulls forward the business versus just being something I enjoy to do and it's just a networking tool. I think it could be much more, but I haven't worked too hard on the strategy. Yeah.
Have you? So you play the role of a drop-in CEO when you do consulting? Is that kind of how you?
Mindset. I drop into organizations or situations, and I'll partner with the CEO, but I'm an extension of them. But I may be the head of quality, the head of operational excellence, or the head of their food safety. But I will take them not only through the specific business problem, but because of my experience, I'll just take care of it so they can go off and do other things. And I elevate their leadership. So when I'm done, they can go back to doing the things and growing their business, and they don't have to worry anymore. I give them peace of mind. So I call it the drop-in CEO because that's what somebody did many, many years ago when I was in business, and that just stuck with me. That's just what I do. I drop in, I fix it, give you peace of mind, I get out.
It doesn't seem like you're doing this at the moment, or maybe you are slightly, but you could take those experiences and make those into like sort of a storied episode, right? Oh, and I dropped into this company, and here's the little story of that drop-in CEO.
I weave that in. I weave those little stories in along the way, but not as a standalone episode. But maybe I should talk about what I've done actually as a solo.
Names removed to protect the innocent, right?
Yeah. Industry.
Or the guilty, and whatever the case. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what's going on with me.
Thanks.
Right. Reflecting.
Rob, how about you?
Well, I mean, there's always a million things to talk about the podcasting stuff that's going on around with what I'm doing, but I think as I think about the podcasting that I'm doing presently today, have been doing the same show essentially that I'm doing right now for over 10 years. So it's been a long journey with the show that I'm doing. It's the new media show that I do every week, actually twice a week. But I've always been trying to think about ways to evolve that show to grow its audience. We're in the between 8 and 12,000 downloads per episode range with that show right now. But it's been, like I said, it's been built over 10 or 12 years. So it's not something that's new to the market. But I do think that there's things that we can do that's different. And as I look to the future, one of the things that I did a couple of years ago that really made the show stand out to make it grow was doing live events, taking that show and putting it up on stage, and either streaming it live or doing it in front of a live audience. So that was the thing that I was doing a lot of prior to COVID. And when COVID hit, basically that got taken off of my promotional marketing plate. So I still tried to do it with the virtual events. I tried to have like a virtual thing. I did it with Podcast Movement with the show, pulled together a similar kind of a panel type of a thing, and did the show live. I don't think that it had the same impact of doing it live on stage at, let's say, a Podcast Movement or a Podfest or all those kind of things. Where I think at Podcast Movement, the last time we did it, I think we had like 300 or 400 people in the audience. So people were engaged with that. I think these live virtual events, people are not as engaged. So it's not equivalent, is what I'm saying. So the show, I think, is labored a little bit around the promotion of it because of that. So I think that the big thing that I'm seeing happen right now in the market, and I alluded to this with Ethan here before the show, was I started to connect up a little bit more with a couple of platforms that are new platforms that are doing some interesting things around live audio. One's called Chalk, and that's CALK, and another one's called Clubhouse. These are primarily mobile first platforms, but what they're doing is they're bringing together groups of people that are able to come in and do not unlike what's been going on in live talk radio for many, many years, where community can be built around a particular subject or personality or something like that. And people come in, and the whole show is really mostly about the interaction with the audience, right? Where the audience can push a button in an app and actually ask a question or contribute or be pulled up on stage to be a live, guest or speaker, right? So you can kind of invite people to join these things. It's not unlike what we've seen, I think, with Zoom and with these other platforms. So what's different about this is just audio. So it's almost like a social network for just audio creators. And so those two platforms. Chalk is more of create a show on the platform, build a community around it, and have these live programs, right, that people can contribute in real time, which hasn't really existed that well in podcasting over the years. A lot of the live programs have been, you can talk in a chat room or something like that, but that's always been kind of separate from the experience to some degree of listening to the live show. Zoom has had these, where you can have large groups of people watching what you're doing and maybe have a couple of speakers or something like that, but it really wasn't as conducive to letting people jump in and out and contribute and be a part of the show at a really deep level. And both these platforms are also working on having private paid for shows as well that are part of this as well. So there's opportunities, I think, as we look to the future, with this whole live aspect of playing that up. And I think people are really needing that connection, that community more than ever, I think, right now. And I'm not sure that these, Zoom and these live video platforms have really done that job as well as what's possible. And I think we're going to continue to see the innovation come to these online social platforms and get better and better and better. Hopefully they can be gotten better. I think that there's a certain amount of people out there that feel like it's, we've kind of tapped that out, but I don't know. I'm hopeful as we look to the future, we start to see events come back that we will see these hybrid things happen that will extend the real world events in a much broader way, and to build larger communities around these live events as well, as they're done, in higher quality ways, and are using really advanced technology to connect audiences with the program.
It really shows the need for this connection people have. I mean, you said, oh, Zoom isn't necessarily cutting it. It's like, well, Zoom was never actually meant to connect
Right.
people socially. It's just
Right.
a business. I mean, it's just about video conferencing for
Right.
corporate situations primarily. I think that's their target audience.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden they have,
Right.
people having parties and, making friends and doing stuff on Zoom.
Yeah.
But
Well, and a
whenever
lot
you
of
have people hacking existing things to make them
Right.
work for those separate
Right.
things, it
And
shows a
then
need.
there's all these other platforms that are popping up that are basically adding to what Zoom does, right? They're creating those layers around Zoom to make that functionality happen. I look at all the platforms that are out there now. That Podcast Movement is a good example with that, where they partnered with another company that had that social layer, and then just Zoom kind of like was the video interface for that, right? So that's what's happening in the market. But I'm talking to another company. It's called Run of the World .today, that's actually integrating all these things together into one platform, not just having to bolt together, like the Eventbrite stuff with Patreon, and then have Zoom be the video part of it. I mean, a lot of the events have been kind of piecemealing this together. I think that the future is an integrated platform, and I think we're starting to see those things start to happen now.
Fascinating. Did anybody else want to share anything in the last minute or two, or?
Didn't realize that's where we're at.
Yeah, that went by fast.
Yes, Rob, I'd love to just catch you for a minute of it, unless you got to go when we're done.
Okay. Yeah. So I think we're.
Henry, did you have something to share? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, we can talk about it the next time. I mean, for me, I'm
Cool.
in the middle of planning for next year. So the shift that I've kind of come to reality on now as to where I'm at is a lot more affiliate relationships. And so I'm going to look to focus on tapping into that even more so in 2021.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And I'm hearing more and more is, one of the first questions I ask when I get a free coaching consultation, which is at the top of my funnel after, you listen to the show and then you have the courage to schedule a call, is how did you find me? I'm hearing more and more through the website, so I'm fortunate that 4 years worth of content is starting to pay off. And that's mostly how people are discovering me, is now through a Google search.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's very important, useful information.
Yeah, because again, it continues to be, Rob has talked about this forever.
Yeah.
Podcast discovery is still it might be the single biggest barrier, I think, in particular, as there's, I don't know what the stats are, the latest, Rob's, but thousands of shows coming on every week. And so it gets harder and harder to get found. You were talking about Ethan being in the top 100. And I used to be in the top 200, but I got squeezed out mostly by the procasters, right? So it's getting harder and harder, at least on the Apple platforms, which are still by far my most listened to platform for my audience when I look at the stats. Right. So I gotta consider that's, if anybody's going to discover me on a podcast platform or directory, it's probably going to be the Apple, and discovery on that platform to find me is really difficult. So most people are tending to find me, it seems now, again, this is rather anecdotal, by my website as opposed to discovering me on Apple Podcasts or iTunes.
Yeah, that's what the research is showing too, that more people are finding podcasts in search these days. Not search in Apple, but
Google search
off search.
Or some other search engine. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
And then if you're going to stay on for a minute afterwards, I've got a couple other ideas to run by you for potential future guests.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So Deb, you wanted to.
Okay.
You just had a question? Yeah. For Rob or something?
Yeah. 2 quick questions. So you guys talk about lists, where to find you. The only place I have right now is this app called Chartable. and occasionally I pop up in the top 100 in the Netherlands or Germany. I need to know what's the best list to see. Okay, am I in the top 500? Just to know where I'm at. Where do I go? What are your go-to lists or
We'll
apps?
go to I look at Chartable.
Yeah,
I
I'd say
think they
that
do pretty good.
that's probably pretty good. They're doing the best of anybody in the industry to aggregate those
If I
kind
don't
of
see
things.
myself in the top 100, I'm just not there yet. But I can't even see where am I at if I'm
Yeah.
under. Okay.
I will say this: I think the less data there is, the more weird it is. Like I wrote Chris and Ari the other day. I was like, looks like we're like the #1 podcast in Bermuda today.
That's what I'm doing.
Success.
And that would go right on my website.
All right, so that's one.
It is. And to your point, Deb, it's just, it's not unlike, certainly with the internet now, because of its maturity, you can find those rankings down to, very little data. But I think, and Rob can chime in here, more expert, somebody like Chartable seems to me to be doing the best at aggregating this data to
Okay. So
to
that's
chart
my
us.
first question. Rob, I just stumbled upon the whatever that Emmy award is for podcasting and the
the Ambi Awards. Yeah.
Emmy awards, and the deadline is tomorrow, and I got to pay money in order to do it. And I was thinking maybe under the host category versus business category. Just give me a 30-second elevator pitch. I may say it's not worth my time, but maybe next year I can aspire to it. And what does it do for me? All of a sudden,
Well, I mean, to be entirely frank about it, I mean, it is a first year event we're pulling together. So what its potential is what we all make it to be. So, I think it's still something that we shall see how the media covers it, and we shall see what the impact is of it. I know I'm constantly providing feedback to the team over there around ways that we can drive benefit to shows that are part of it, whether they submitted to it for nomination or what comes out of the nomination process to drive as much exposure, because that's really the purpose of the whole thing, is to drive greater visibility and exposure to the whole industry and the great content that's in this industry, and to build buzz, not unlike what happens in the film industry and things like that, or the music industry with the Grammys and things like that. Was kind of the bigger goal from the concept of it. But I think if you look at it applied to the podcasting space, I do believe that there's an expectation for benefit for all that are involved. I mean, I think you can look at examples like the Webby Awards and others, but that's the goal. I mean, the organization it's a mentorship platform. It's an education platform. It's and it's award and recognitions platform. It's an opportunity to network the whole industry together in a different way than what, like, let's say Podcast Movement is doing, or Podfest. Even though I do believe that Podcast Movement is going to play a bigger role in association type activities as you look to the future of almost like a trade organization. So I think that's kind of a separate role. I originally was thinking that the Podcast Academy could have that industry role, but the Podcast Academy, the people that are involved in it, didn't really want that. They wanted it to be more of a content focus, not so much an industry focus. So there's going to be kind of a separation as you look to the future. This industry needs pathways for the industry to communicate in a joint way to the public, and to have pathways for improvement and consensus. And who knows what the legal issues that the industry is going to have in the future, whether it be regulatory, FCC, other things. So think NAB, and I've been thinking a lot about these things and pushing on areas that may move us in a positive direction to move this industry forward in a positive direction.
So if I could translate, because I'm trying to think, like, okay, so this would be recognition amongst peers and a support system, versus I've been approached by different networks, like, hey, join our C-suite network. We'll promote your podcast. We'll help you with some sponsorship.
It can help with all those things. I mean, I think if you're I mean, even nominating, because I'm pushing in the organization for all of the shows that were submitted for consideration that get exposure too. So
Like
that's
any feedback after I submit, just to say, hey, thank you for your thing, but you're
that, and like a little tile or icon that you can display on your website, is also a big part of it too, that can communicate to your audience that you're involved in it and you're in consideration for an award. You can make those kind of claims. So I think it's important for the podcaster to have that. If they're going to invest in submitting for consideration, there needs to be other ways that you can leverage that. Right.
I have till tomorrow, so I have to find my best episode that I want to submit.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that was all I wanted to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, everybody. I feel like I got quite a bit of attention today, but I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We're here for you. We're here for you. We want to help you get where you need to go. So,
All right, have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
Yep.
See you later.
Bye.
Okay.
Let me just sign off real quick. Let's see here.